At the philosophical heart of Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom lies one of the most compelling ethical questions the entire franchise has ever dared to pose. Do dinosaurs, creatures brought back from extinction through human scientific intervention, have a right to exist, and more importantly, do humans have a moral obligation to save them? This question is not merely a plot device. It is the engine that drives every character decision, every scene, and every emotional beat of the film. From its opening moments to its closing shot, Fallen Kingdom forces its audience to sit with a deeply uncomfortable truth. Humanity created these animals, humanity endangered them, and now humanity must decide whether to save them or let them die again, this time, permanently. The volcano, nature's verdict and the clock of extinction. The film opens with the revelation that Isla Nublar, the fictional Central American island that served as the setting for both Jurassic Park, 1993, and Jurassic World, 2015, is home to a previously dormant volcano that has suddenly become violently active. Scientists and conservationists around the world are debating whether the United States government should intervene to evacuate the dinosaurs before the eruption destroys the island entirely. This volcanic threat is brilliantly symbolic. Nature itself, the very force that originally wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago through a catastrophic asteroid impact, is once again poised to erase them. The island becomes a metaphor for a ticking clock of irreversibility. If the dinosaurs die in this eruption, there will be no second chances. The genetic material required to clone new ones is rapidly disappearing. Extinction, in this context, is final. The film uses this threat to create an urgent moral pressure cooker. Characters cannot afford to philosophize indefinitely, decisions must be made, and the consequences of inaction are catastrophic. This narrative device elevates the stakes far beyond a simple action-adventure premise. Owen Grady and Claire Dearing, personal stakes and character growth. Owen Grady, played by Pratt, returns not merely as an action hero but as a man with a deeply personal connection to the dinosaurs he is being asked to save. His bond with Blue, the last surviving velociraptor from his original pack, is the emotional spine of the entire film. Owen trained Blue from birth. Their relationship transcends the typical handler-animal dynamic. Blue demonstrates an unprecedented level of empathy and intelligence among the dinosaurs in the franchise, and Owen's desperation to save her reflects something profound, the idea that these animals are not simply engineered products or theme park attractions. They are living beings capable of loyalty, memory, and emotional connection. Claire Dearing, played by Bryce Dallas Howard, undergoes perhaps the most significant character evolution in the film. In Jurassic World, Claire was portrayed as a corporate executive more concerned with operational efficiency than with the welfare of the dinosaurs under her management. In Fallen Kingdom, she has completely transformed. She now runs the Dinosaur Protection Group, a conservation organization dedicated to lobbying for the legal protection and rescue of the Isla Nublar dinosaurs. Her transformation embodies the film's larger thematic argument, that the creation of life carries with it an enduring ethical responsibility, regardless of how inconvenient or costly that responsibility becomes. Together, Owen and Claire travel back to the island not for glory or financial reward, but because they genuinely believe these animals deserve a chance to live. This positions them as moral anchors in a story filled with people who see the dinosaurs as commodities. Eli Mills and the auction, greed as the true monster. If the volcano represents nature's indifference, and Owen and Claire represent humanity's best impulses, then Eli Mills and the auction he orchestrates represent humanity's worst. Mills, played by Rafe Spall, initially presents himself as a philanthropist, an aide to the ailing Benjamin Lockwood, the former partner of John Hammond, the original founder of Jurassic Park. Mills claims to be operating a sanctuary for the rescued dinosaurs, a place where they can live out their lives in peace, free from exploitation. This is a lie. Mills is secretly using Lockwood's resources and the dinosaur rescue mission as cover for an illegal and deeply sinister commercial operation. The dinosaurs rescued from Isla Nublar are brought to the Lockwood estate in Northern California, where they are auctioned off to the highest bidders, arms dealers, warlords, criminal organizations, and wealthy collectors from around the world. Each dinosaur species is valued based on its potential usefulness as a weapon or spectacle. The auction sequence is one of the most cinematically striking in the film. Dinosaurs are paraded before a crowd of obscenely wealthy buyers in a dimly lit underground hall, treated as luxury merchandise. The scene draws an uncomfortable parallel to real-world wildlife trafficking and black market animal trade, giving the film a sharp social critique beneath its blockbuster surface. The message is clear: when powerful and greedy humans encounter something miraculous, their first instinct is almost always to monetize it. The crown jewel of the auction is the Indoraptor, a newly engineered hybrid dinosaur, smaller and more agile than the Indominus Rex from the previous film, designed specifically to be a deployable military weapon. The Indoraptor can be directed to attack specific targets using a laser targeting system and an audio command. It represents the ultimate corruption of the original Jurassic Park vision, life not celebrated for its wonder, but engineered for destruction and profit. Maisie Lockwood, the human mirror of the dinosaur question. Among the film's most significant and controversial narrative choices is the character of Maisie Lockwood, Benjamin Lockwood's granddaughter. Played by Isabella Sermon, Maisie is a curious, courageous young girl who forms an immediate bond with Owen and Claire. She is also, as the film ultimately reveals, a human clone. Maisie was created by Benjamin Lockwood using the same cloning technology developed for the Dinosaur Project, in an attempt to bring back his deceased daughter. This revelation reframes the entire film's ethical argument. The dinosaur question, should engineered life be granted rights, protection, and the chance to survive, is suddenly not just about reptiles and prehistoric creatures. It is about personhood, identity, and the definition of what it means to be alive. Maisie is fully human in every meaningful sense. She thinks, feels, loves, and fears. The fact that she was cloned rather than born conventionally does not diminish her humanity in the eyes of anyone who knows her, and crucially, it should not. The film uses her character to argue by extension that the dinosaurs, despite being engineered rather than naturally evolved, are no less real or deserving of consideration for their origins. At the film's climax, it is Maisie who makes the decisive choice. When the dinosaurs are trapped in the estate's basement, slowly being killed by a hydrogen cyanide gas leak, the debate among the adult characters about whether to release them into the wild reaches an impasse. It is Maisie, the clone, the engineered life form, who presses the button to open the doors, releasing the dinosaurs into the forests of Northern California. Her reasoning, expressed in a single devastating line, encapsulates the film's entire moral argument: she saved them because they are alive, just like her. Jeff Goldblum and the Senate hearing, the voice of caution. Jeff Goldblum's brief but memorable return as Dr. Ian Malcolm bookends the film with a philosophical warning that echoes across the entire franchise. Testifying before a Senate committee at both the beginning and end of the film, Malcolm argues not for the rescue of the dinosaurs, but for allowing nature to correct humanity's mistake. Malcolm's position is not callous, it is rooted in his long-standing belief in chaos theory and the limits of human control. He argued in the original Jurassic Park that the dinosaurs never should have been created, not because they lack value, but because humanity fundamentally lacks the wisdom to manage the consequences of playing God. His testimony at the film's conclusion, delivered after the dinosaurs have been released into the mainland United States, is both a eulogy and a warning: a new era has begun, one humanity is not prepared for. His words, that life cannot be contained, that evolution will find a way, serve as the thematic bridge between Fallen Kingdom and its sequel, Jurassic World Dominion, in which dinosaurs and humans must learn to coexist on a shared planet. Tone and legacy: a darker, more gothic vision. Directed by J.A. Bayona, known for the deeply emotional Spanish horror film The Orphanage and the disaster drama The Impossible, Fallen Kingdom deliberately shifts the franchise's tone into darker, more gothic territory. The film's second half, set almost entirely within the cavernous, shadow-draped corridors of Lockwood's palatial estate, plays more like a haunted house thriller than a summer blockbuster. This tonal shift was divisive among audiences and critics, but it was entirely intentional. Bayona wanted the film to confront its horror with honesty rather than spectacle, to make the audience feel the weight of what is being lost and the danger of what is being unleashed. The Indoraptor stalking Maisie through moonlit bedrooms is not simply an action sequence, it is a nightmare made flesh, a monster created by human arrogance hunting an innocent born of human ambition. Conclusion: the point of no return. Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom is, at its core, a film about the moment after which nothing can go back to the way it was. The dinosaurs are no longer contained on an island. They are in the world now, real, dangerous, magnificent, and irreversible. The ethical questions the film raises about engineered life, corporate greed, conservation responsibility, and the definition of personhood do not resolve neatly. They explode outward into the future, demanding an answer that no single film can provide. The story begins in the immediate aftermath of the catastrophic Jurassic World incident, 6 months after the death of the monstrous Indominus Rex. Isla Nublar, once a thriving dinosaur theme park drawing millions of visitors, now sits completely abandoned, a ghost island swallowed by jungle and silence. It is a graveyard of ambition, a place where humanity's greatest scientific achievement collapsed under the weight of its own arrogance. Into this abandoned wilderness arrives a small mercenary team with a precise and dangerous objective: to retrieve DNA from the remains of the Indominus Rex, whose bones lie at the bottom of the island's lagoon. A two-man diving team descends into the dark water and successfully retrieves a bone sample from the sunken carcass. But the ocean does not give up its secrets without a price. The Mosasaurus, the massive, ocean-dwelling prehistoric predator that had been kept in the park's lagoon, devours their submersible whole, demonstrating immediately that these creatures are not exhibits to be controlled. They are apex predators, as dangerous and unpredictable as any force of nature. On land, the Tyrannosaurus Rex attacks the remaining team members, forcing them to scramble for their helicopter. They escape with the bone sample, but the horror is not finished. As the helicopter lifts away and the lagoon gates are only partially closed, the Mosasaurus pushes through the gap and slides into the open ocean, free, enormous, and entirely uncontained. This opening sequence is deceptively simple but thematically thunderous. It establishes from the very first minutes that containment is an illusion, that these animals operate on their own terms, and that the consequences of their creation are already beginning to spill beyond the boundaries humanity thought it had built. The Mosasaurus entering open ocean is the film's first signal that the world is about to change in ways that cannot be undone. 3 years pass. Isla Nublar's dormant volcano has awakened, and scientists confirm that a massive eruption is imminent. If the dinosaurs are not evacuated, every remaining species on the island, including creatures that exist nowhere else on Earth, will be wiped out permanently. For the second time in the history of the planet, these animals face extinction. This time, however, there is a choice. A United States Senate committee convenes to debate the question: should the government intervene to save the dinosaurs? This is not merely a logistical debate. It is a profound ethical and philosophical argument about responsibility, rights, and the consequences of scientific creation. Dr. Ian Malcolm, the chaos theoretician who survived the original Jurassic Park disaster and has spent decades warning humanity about the dangers of genetic resurrection, testifies before the committee. His position is firm and unflinching: the dinosaurs should be allowed to perish. Not out of cruelty, but out of logic and humility. Malcolm argues that the dinosaurs never should have been cloned in the first place, that John Hammond's original vision was a catastrophic overreach of human ambition, and that allowing nature to correct this mistake, even through volcanic destruction, is the most responsible course of action. His testimony reflects a genuine philosophical position, that humanity does not possess the wisdom, restraint, or institutional competence to manage the existence of apex predators reborn into a modern world. Playing God has consequences, and the responsible response to those consequences is not to double down, but to step back. The Senate ultimately votes against government intervention. The dinosaurs, as far as the official machinery of democratic governance is concerned, are on their own. But not everyone accepts this verdict. Claire, Owen, and the mission to save Blue. Claire Deering has spent the 3 years since the Jurassic World collapse in moral transformation. The efficient, detached corporate manager who once spoke of dinosaurs in terms of attendance figures and operational metrics has been replaced by a passionate conservationist. She now leads the Dinosaur Protection Group, a non-governmental organization dedicated entirely to lobbying for the legal recognition and physical rescue of the Isla Nublar dinosaurs. For Claire, these animals are not products or commodities. They are living beings, and their lives have value independent of their commercial utility. When the Senate vote fails, Claire is approached by Sir Benjamin Lockwood, an elderly, ailing man revealed to be the former partner of John Hammond himself, the original architect of the Jurassic Park project. Lockwood, along with his younger aide Eli Mills, presents Claire with what appears to be a private humanitarian mission: use Lockwood's considerable personal resources to fund a rescue operation, relocate the dinosaurs to a remote island sanctuary, and allow them to live out their lives in peace, away from human exploitation. The plan requires Claire to travel to Isla Nublar personally and reactivate the park's dormant animal tracking system, because the island's digital infrastructure has been offline since the park's collapse. There is one animal of particular interest: Blue, the last surviving member of Owen Grady's Velociraptor pack. Blue is extraordinary, not just as a biological specimen, but as an individual. Owen trained her from birth, and over years of interaction, Blue developed a capacity for empathy, recognition, and loyalty that no other dinosaur in the franchise's history has demonstrated to the same degree. She is, in the most meaningful sense, a person, not human, but possessed of an inner life rich enough to form genuine bonds across species lines. To bring Blue in safely, Claire needs Owen. Owen Grady agrees to return to the island, and his motivation is entirely personal. He is not doing this for Lockwood or for Mills or for any abstract conservationist principle. He is going back for Blue. This distinction matters enormously. Owen's relationship with Blue is the film's most direct and unambiguous argument for why the dinosaurs deserve to be saved. If Blue can love and remember and grieve, then she cannot be dismissed as mere property. She is owed something. The betrayal on Isla Nublar. The mission to Isla Nublar begins with urgency and ends in betrayal. Claire and technician Franklin Webb successfully reactivate the tracking system while Owen, paleoveterinarian Zia Rodriguez, and the mercenary team led by Ken Wheatley track Blue to her location. The encounter with Blue goes catastrophically wrong. Blue is shot, and Owen is tranquilized by Wheatley himself, revealing in one brutal moment that the mercenary team's true loyalties lie elsewhere. Wheatley abandons Owen, Claire, and Franklin on the island, taking Zia hostage to ensure Blue receives emergency medical treatment and survives the journey off the island. The volcano then begins its full eruption, and the sequence that follows is one of the film's most visually spectacular and emotionally devastating. A massive dinosaur stampede erupts across the island as every species flees the advancing lava and pyroclastic clouds. Owen, Claire, and Franklin run alongside creatures that would normally hunt them, all survival instincts temporarily overriding the predator-prey dynamic. The scene carries enormous emotional weight because the audience understands that most of these animals will not make it. The ship loaded with captured dinosaurs departs the island as the remaining creatures, Brachiosauruses, Carnotauruses, species that took millions of years to evolve and decades of human ingenuity to resurrect, are left behind to die. The image of a Brachiosaurus standing alone on a burning dock, engulfed in ash and smoke, is perhaps the most genuinely heartbreaking image in the entire Jurassic franchise. It transforms the film from action spectacle into something approaching tragedy. Owen, Claire, and Franklin manage to sneak aboard the departing ship. Below deck, Zia is already working to save Blue's life, performing an emergency transfusion using Tyrannosaurus blood to keep her alive. Blue survives. But the three heroes, now aboard a vessel they have no control over, are carried toward a destination and a conspiracy far darker than anything they anticipated. The dinosaurs are not being taken to any sanctuary. They are being transported to the Lockwood family estate in Northern California, where Eli Mills has been secretly orchestrating one of the most audacious criminal enterprises in history, a black market auction of living dinosaurs to the wealthiest and most dangerous buyers in the world. Arms dealers, warlords, criminal financiers, and private collectors gather in the estate's underground hall to bid on prehistoric animals as though they were rare firearms or stolen artworks. Mills is not the philanthropist he presented himself as. He is a predator in a suit, a man who saw the incomprehensible value locked inside Lockwood's resources and scientific connections and chose to exploit every ounce of it for personal gain. When Benjamin Lockwood himself discovers the truth and confronts Mills, Mills murders him without hesitation, smothering the elderly man with a pillow in his own bed. The man who funded the rescue mission is killed by the man he trusted to carry it out. It is a moment of pure, cold evil that strips away any remaining ambiguity about who Mills truly is. The centerpiece of the auction is the Indoraptor, a new transgenic hybrid created by Dr. Henry Wu using Indominus Rex and Velociraptor DNA. Smaller and faster than its predecessor, the Indoraptor is specifically engineered as a deployable weapon. Using a laser targeting system and an audio command, the Indoraptor can be directed to attack any designated target with lethal precision. Wu himself protests its sale, warning that the animal is still a prototype and behaviorally unpredictable. Mills ignores him. The profit is too enormous to delay. Maisie Lockwood, Benjamin's young granddaughter who lives at the estate, has already overheard enough of the conspiracy to understand what is happening. She warns her grandfather, setting in motion the chain of events that leads to his murder. Later, the film delivers its most startling revelation about Maisie herself. She is not Lockwood's biological granddaughter. She is a human clone, created from the genetic material of Lockwood's deceased daughter, using the same cloning technology originally developed for the dinosaur program. This is precisely why Hammond ended his partnership with Lockwood years ago. Hammond, for all his recklessness with dinosaur DNA, drew a firm line at human cloning. Lockwood crossed it. Maisie's existence as a clone is not treated as something shameful or monstrous by the film. She is fully, completely, undeniably human, a child who laughs and cries and loves and fears. Her engineered origin does not diminish her personhood by a single measure. And this is the point. The film places Maisie alongside the dinosaurs not to dehumanize her, but to humanize them. If Maisie, created in a laboratory from preserved DNA, deserves to live and to be free, then so does Blue. So do all of them. The Indoraptor's rampage and the final choice. Owen incites a Stygia, a smaller, thick-skulled dinosaur with a talent for headbutting, into breaking open the cell where he and Claire are being held. They escape, find Maisie, and attempt to stop the auction. Owen releases the Stygia into the auction hall, creating chaos that disrupts the proceedings. In the confusion, Wheatley, greedy even in the midst of disaster, approaches the apparently unconscious Indoraptor to extract a tooth as a personal trophy. The Indoraptor, feigning sedation with terrifying intelligence, waits until Wheatley is within reach, then tears him apart. It also kills Eversole and several others as it escapes its enclosure. What follows is a prolonged nightmare chase through the darkened corridors and moonlit rooms of the Lockwood estate, the Indoraptor hunting Owen, Claire, and Maisie with systematic, almost playful cruelty. The sequence is deliberately gothic, Bayona drawing on his horror film background to stage a dinosaur as a genuine monster, not a spectacle. The Indoraptor is not a force of nature. It is a created weapon, and its terrifying precision reflects the horror of engineering a living thing specifically to kill. The confrontation reaches its climax on the glass roof of the estate's greenhouse. Blue, freed by Zia, attacks the Indoraptor and drives it through the glass ceiling. The hybrid is impaled on a ceratopsid skull below, killed by the bones of another dinosaur, in a darkly poetic moment of natural justice. Blue survives unharmed. In the basement, the rescued dinosaurs are slowly dying from a hydrogen cyanide gas leak caused by the chaos. Claire finds the control panel that can open the outer doors and release the animals. She reaches for the button, and stops. Owen, standing beside her, asks her not to open it. If the dinosaurs are released into mainland America, there is no taking it back. The world will never be the same. It is the right instinct, arrived at too late. Maisie opens the door. She does it because they are alive. Because she is alive. Because the origin of a living thing does not determine the value of its existence, and no one, not Mills, not Wheatley, not the Senate, not Owen, has the right to decide that life forfeited through no fault of its own deserves to end. It is the film's moral climax, and it is delivered not by a scientist or a soldier or a politician, but by a child, herself an engineered life, who simply cannot watch living things die when she has the power to save them. A new world begins. As Owen, Claire, Maisie, Zia, and Franklin escape, Mills attempts to flee with the Indominus Rex bone, the genetic key to creating more hybrid monsters. The Tyrannosaurus devours him and tramples the bone into dust. The greed that started everything is consumed by one of the very creatures it sought to exploit. At a new Senate hearing, Dr. Malcolm delivers his final verdict. A new age has begun, he says. Dinosaurs are in the world now, in forests, on coastlines, in the darkness outside suburban windows. Humanity wanted to play God. Now it must live with what it made. The closing images of the film show dinosaurs roaming free across American wilderness, majestic, dangerous, and utterly irreversible. The fallen kingdom is not a place. It is a way of thinking, the belief that these animals could be owned, controlled, or erased whenever convenient. That kingdom has fallen. What comes next is coexistence, whether humanity is ready for it or not. You said, explain this key point from the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom 2018 movie in full expanded form of 2,000 words and do not put references, cast. Every great film is ultimately defined not by its special effects or its spectacle, but by the human beings, and in this case, the extraordinary creatures that populate its world. Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom is a film rich with moral complexity, and that complexity lives inside its characters. Each member of the cast represents a distinct philosophical position on the central question the film poses. What do we owe to the life we create? Some characters answer with compassion, others with greed, others with cold scientific detachment, and still others with the kind of instinctive moral clarity that only a child can possess. Understanding who these people are, what drives them, and what they ultimately choose is the key to understanding everything the film is trying to say. Owen Grady, the man who sees individuals, not species. Owen Grady, portrayed by Pratt, is the film's primary action protagonist, but to reduce him to that role would be to miss what makes him genuinely interesting. Owen is a Navy veteran and a trained ethologist, a scientist who studies animal behavior in natural conditions, and his background gives him a perspective on the dinosaurs that almost no other character in the franchise shares. Where others see monsters, spectacles, weapons, or products, Owen sees individuals. His history with the velociraptors he trained at Jurassic World is the foundation of his entire character. He raised Blue and her pack from birth, establishing a bond of mutual recognition and trust that is extraordinary not just within the world of the film but within the entire history of human-animal relationships as the franchise imagines it. Owen does not simply command Blue, he communicates with her. He understands her body language, her moods, her loyalties. And crucially, she understands his. In Fallen Kingdom, Owen's return to Isla Nublar is motivated entirely by this personal bond. He is not an idealist in the way Claire has become. He does not spend time philosophizing about dinosaur rights or the ethics of genetic engineering. He operates on something more immediate and more powerful, love and loyalty to a specific individual animal who saved his life and whose life he intends to save in return. This emotional directness makes Owen the film's moral compass in practical terms. While others debate in Senate chambers or conspire in underground auction halls, Owen acts. He gets on the island, he finds Blue, and he refuses to abandon her even when everything goes wrong around him. Owen also represents something important about the nature of heroism in this franchise. He is not invincible, not infallible, and not immune to manipulation. He is tranquilized and abandoned on a burning island. He is captured and imprisoned. He makes decisions with incomplete information. But his fundamental decency, his refusal to treat the dinosaurs as anything other than living beings worthy of respect, never wavers. In a story full of people who see the dinosaurs as assets, Owen sees them as neighbors. Claire Dearing, from corporate manager to moral advocate. Bryce Dallas Howard's Claire Dearing undergoes the most explicitly articulated character transformation in the film, and arguably in the entire trilogy. When audiences first encountered Claire in Jurassic World, she was a study in detached efficiency, a woman who ran the park like a business because she genuinely believed that was the right way to run it. She spoke of dinosaurs in units and attractions and revenue projections. She wore heels in a jungle and treated chaos as a scheduling problem. By Fallen Kingdom, Claire has been remade entirely. She now leads the Dinosaur Protection Group, a conservation and advocacy organization dedicated to securing legal recognition and physical protection for the Isla Nublar dinosaurs. She has exchanged corporate suits for field gear and boardroom arguments for Senate testimony. The transformation is not presented as sudden or superficial, it is the result of genuine trauma, genuine reflection, and genuine moral growth. Claire saw what happened when the dinosaurs were treated as products, and she spent 3 years making sure it would never happen again. What makes Claire compelling in this film is that her advocacy is tested under conditions of extreme pressure and repeated betrayal. She goes to Isla Nublar in good faith, believing she is part of a rescue mission. She discovers it is a trafficking operation. She watches the animals she fought to save being auctioned to arms dealers. And at the film's climax, she is confronted with the most difficult choice of all, whether to release the dinosaurs into the mainland United States, knowing that this act is irreversible and potentially catastrophic. Claire reaches for the button and then hesitates. That hesitation is not cowardice or hypocrisy. It is the mark of someone who understands that good intentions do not exempt anyone from the weight of consequences. Her journey through the film is the franchise's most honest exploration of what genuine advocacy actually looks like when the ideals meet reality, messy, costly, and full of impossible choices. Eli Mills, ambition as moral corruption. Rafe Spall's Eli Mills is one of the franchise's most interesting antagonists because he does not initially present as one. He is polished, articulate, and apparently compassionate, a young man entrusted with the enormous responsibility of managing Benjamin Lockwood's fortune and legacy. His stated goal is to ensure that Lockwood's vision survives beyond the old man's death, which is presented as a noble form of loyalty. The actor himself noted that ambition is the engine of Mills's moral collapse. Mills genuinely believes, at least initially, that he is doing what is necessary. He has been given a mandate: preserve and grow the Lockwood legacy, and he has interpreted that mandate in the most self-serving way possible. Rather than honoring Lockwood's conservationist ideals, Mills has identified the dinosaurs as an extraordinary commercial opportunity and seized it without moral hesitation. What makes Mills truly dangerous is his complete indifference to the suffering his ambition causes. He orchestrates the betrayal of Owen, Claire, and their team on Isla Nublar. He sanctions the abandonment of dozens of dinosaur species to volcanic death. He murders Benjamin Lockwood, the man who trusted him, who gave him everything, with cold, methodical efficiency when that man becomes an obstacle. Mills is not a passionate villain driven by ideology or hatred. He is a pragmatist who has decided that profit justifies everything. This makes him, in many ways, more frightening than a traditional movie villain, because his mindset is entirely recognizable. He is simply greed in a well-tailored suit. His ultimate fate, consumed by the Tyrannosaurus he treated as merchandise. While the Indominus Rex bone he tried to steal is trampled to dust, is the film's most explicit piece of poetic justice. Franklin Webb, played by Justice Smith, and Zia Rodriguez, played by Daniella Pineda, represent the human texture of the Dinosaur Protection Group, the ordinary people who believe in Claire's mission enough to follow her into a burning island with no guarantee of survival. Franklin is a former IT technician for Jurassic World who now serves as the group's systems analyst and hacker. He is anxious, physically unassuming, and frequently terrified, which makes him one of the film's most relatable characters. He did not sign up to be a field operative. He signed up to write code and maintain servers. Yet when the situation demands it, Franklin rises to meet it, evading capture at the Lockwood estate, freeing Zia from her captors, and contributing meaningfully to the mission despite his evident fear. His courage is not the theatrical, effortless kind. It is the harder, more honest kind, doing the necessary thing while being genuinely scared. Zia Rodriguez is Franklin's temperamental opposite. A former Marine who retrained as a paleo-veterinarian, Zia is fiercely competent, aggressively confident, and entirely unintimidated by the chaos around her. Her primary role in the film is medical. She performs the emergency transfusion that saves Blue's life aboard the transport ship, using Tyrannosaurus blood as a substitute to stabilize Blue's critically injured system. This act of veterinary improvisation under pressure is both a practical plot necessity and a character statement. Zia will do whatever it takes to save a patient, and she does not regard species as a relevant criterion for who deserves care. Together, Franklin and Zia demonstrate that the Dinosaur Protection Group is not simply an abstract political organization. It is made of real people who are willing to put themselves in genuine danger for the animals they believe deserve protection. Sir Benjamin Lockwood, the weight of good intentions. James Cromwell brings enormous gravity and sadness to Benjamin Lockwood, the elderly former partner of John Hammond and the last living connection to the original genesis of the dinosaur cloning project. Lockwood is a man haunted by both his greatest achievement and his gravest transgression. He helped build the technology that brought the dinosaurs back to life, a genuinely miraculous accomplishment. He also used that same technology to clone his deceased daughter, which is why Hammond severed their partnership decades ago. Lockwood's desire to fund the dinosaur rescue mission is presented as a form of penance, an old man trying to correct one of history's great mistakes before he runs out of time to do so. He is sincere in his conservationism, sincere in his care for Maisie, and sincere in his belief that Mills will honor his intentions. This sincerity is what makes his murder so devastating. Lockwood is killed not by a villain from outside his world but by the person he trusted most within it, and he dies without knowing whether his mission will succeed or his legacy will be honored. His character embodies the film's most painful irony, that the people most genuinely motivated by good intentions are often the most vulnerable to exploitation by those without any. Mr. Eversole, moral neutrality as complicity. Toby Jones delivers a memorably reptilian performance as Mr. Eversole, the auctioneer who presides over the underground sale of the Isla Nublar dinosaurs. Jones himself described the character in terms that are both precise and chilling: a man who sees himself not as evil but as neutral, a professional whose job is simply to facilitate transactions regardless of what is being transacted. Eversole's moral neutrality is, of course, not neutrality at all. To facilitate the sale of living beings to arms dealers and warlords is to be complicit in every atrocity that follows. Eversole's self-conception as a detached professional is the most comfortable lie a person can tell themselves, that they are merely an instrument, that the responsibility belongs to whoever holds the money. The film does not allow him this comfort for long. His death at the hands of the Indoraptor he helped sell is swift and unglamorous, a reminder that neutrality toward monstrous things has consequences. Ken Wheatley, mercenary greed in its purest form. Ted Levine's Ken Wheatley is the film's most straightforwardly villainous human presence, a seasoned mercenary who commands the Isla Nublar rescue operation with professional competence and zero moral framework. Wheatley has no ideology, no misguided idealism, no self-justifying narrative. He is simply for sale, and whoever is paying him gets his full and lethal cooperation. His defining character detail is his compulsion to collect teeth from living dinosaurs as personal trophies, a habit that ultimately kills him. When he approaches the apparently sedated Indoraptor to extract a tooth, he is acting entirely in character, treating a living, dangerous, extraordinarily intelligent animal as a source of personal gratification. The Indoraptor, feigning sedation with cold intelligence, waits until Wheatley is within range and then obliterates him. It is the film's most viscerally satisfying comeuppance, greed and carelessness punished by the very thing they underestimated. Dr. Henry Wu, Science Without Conscience. B.D. Wong's Dr. Henry Wu is a character the franchise has been developing across multiple films into one of its most genuinely troubling figures. As the former head geneticist of both the original Jurassic Park and Jurassic World, Wu is the man most directly responsible for the existence of every hybrid dinosaur that has caused catastrophe across the series. The Indominus Rex, the Indoraptor, these are his creations, his professional achievements, his legacy. Wong has described his character's motivation with considerable psychological insight. Wu is driven by love of science and by ego, both of which are enormous. He is capable of genuine brilliance and genuine passion for his work. What he is not capable of, or more precisely, what he refuses to practice, is moral imagination. He does not ask what his creations will be used for. He does not consider the suffering they will cause. He tells himself he is looking at a bigger picture, but the bigger picture he sees is always the scientific achievement, never the human or animal cost. In Fallen Kingdom, Wu protests the premature sale of the Indoraptor prototype, but his protest is scientific rather than ethical. His concern is that the animal is not yet refined enough, not that it should not exist at all or should not be sold as a weapon. This distinction perfectly captures who Wu is, a man who will argue process while ignoring purpose. Maisie Lockwood, engineered life, unquestionable humanity. Isabella Sermon's Maisie Lockwood is the film's most important character and its most radical argument. She is introduced as Benjamin Lockwood's young granddaughter, curious, brave, and possessed of an instinctive empathy for the dinosaurs housed beneath the estate. As the film progresses, she is revealed to be a human clone, created from the DNA of Lockwood's deceased daughter using the same technology that brought the dinosaurs back to life. This revelation is handled with great care. The film does not treat Maisie's cloned origin as a source of horror or as something that diminishes her. She is fully, completely, unreservedly human, a child who loves and fears and grieves and acts with moral courage. Her final decision to open the outer doors and release the dinosaurs into the wider world is the film's most important dramatic moment, and it is motivated by the simplest and most powerful of all arguments: they are alive, just like her. The fact that their existence originated in a laboratory rather than in nature does not make their lives less real or less worth protecting. Maisie is the film's living proof of its central thesis, that the origin of life does not determine its value. Iris, guardian of secrets. Geraldine Chaplin's Iris is a small but meaningful presence in the film as the Lockwood estate's longtime housekeeper and Maisie's devoted nanny. She is the keeper of the family's deepest and most complicated secret, Maisie's true nature, and her fierce protectiveness of the child reflects a maternal bond that transcends the circumstances of Maisie's creation. Iris represents the quiet human decency that exists at the margins of the film's larger drama, the ordinary care and love that continues regardless of extraordinary circumstances surrounding it. Dr. Ian Malcolm, the prophet nobody listened to. Jeff Goldblum's return as Dr. Ian Malcolm is brief but philosophically decisive. Malcolm bookends the film with Senate testimony, and his presence serves as the franchise's continuous thread of cautionary wisdom. He has been warning about the consequences of resurrecting extinct life since the very beginning, and in Fallen Kingdom, he is essentially delivering a verdict rather than an argument. Goldblum himself was characteristically self-deprecating about the size of his role, but director Bayona was clear that Malcolm's appearances are not merely fan service. They are the film's philosophical spine, the voice of someone who has been right all along about things humanity did not want to hear. Malcolm's closing statement about the dawn of a new era, in which humans and dinosaurs must coexist, is not triumphant. It is elegiac. He is not celebrating the world that has arrived. He is acknowledging it, with all the sorrow of a man whose warnings were ignored until it was too late to matter. Senator Sherwood, Democracy's Limitations. Peter Jason. Senator Sherwood represents the institutional dimension of the film's central debate. The Senate committee over which he presides is the mechanism through which democratic society attempts to grapple with an unprecedented moral question, and its failure to act, the vote against government intervention in the dinosaur rescue, illustrates one of the film's quieter arguments, that the official structures of human governance are fundamentally ill-equipped to handle problems that did not exist when those structures were designed. The dinosaur question falls outside every existing legal and ethical framework. The Senate does not know how to answer it, and so it does not. Long before Jurassic World even reached cinema screens in the summer of 2015, the conversations about what would come next had already begun. This is a remarkable fact in itself. It speaks to the extraordinary level of confidence that the filmmakers and studio had in the project, and to the scale of ambition that surrounded the revival of the Jurassic Park franchise after a 14-year gap since Jurassic Park 3 in 2001. The person who first articulated the desire for more films was Steven Spielberg, the legendary director and executive producer whose fingerprints have been on the Jurassic Park franchise since its very inception. Spielberg had directed the original Jurassic Park in 1993 and its first sequel, The Lost World, Jurassic Park in 1997, and his relationship with this material is as long and deep as any in his storied career. During early conversations with Colin Trevorrow about the Jurassic World project, Spielberg expressed not just satisfaction with where the franchise was heading, but genuine enthusiasm for extending it further, multiple films further. He was not thinking about a single sequel. He was thinking about a sustained cinematic universe, a long-form story told across several chapters. This is the context in which everything that followed must be understood. Fallen Kingdom was not conceived as an afterthought or a cash grab capitalizing on Jurassic World's eventual success. It was imagined as part of a deliberate, architecturally planned trilogy from almost the very beginning of the Jurassic World development process. The foundation was being laid before a single frame had been shot. Colin Trevorrow and the philosophy of serialized storytelling. Colin Trevorrow, who wrote and directed Jurassic World and served as co-writer and executive producer on Fallen Kingdom, articulated the creative philosophy behind this approach with impressive clarity as early as 2014, a full year before Jurassic World was released. In interviews conducted during that period, Trevorrow spoke about his desire to create something that felt architecturally coherent rather than episodic. He used the words less arbitrary and episodic to describe what he wanted the sequel series to avoid, and suggested that the films should collectively arc into a series that would feel like a complete story. This is a critically important creative statement. Trevorrow was not simply interested in making sequels. He was interested in making chapters, distinct installments that each advance a larger narrative and thematic argument. The story of how Fallen Kingdom found its director is one of the franchise's most interesting behind-the-scenes narratives, and it begins with a comment Trevorrow made in June 2015, the same month Jurassic World was released. Speaking publicly about the sequel, Trevorrow mentioned that he was personally interested in seeing a Jurassic Park film made by a Spanish horror film director. He did not name names at the time, but the comment was widely interpreted as a signal of the creative direction he envisioned. The Spanish horror film tradition is a rich and distinctive one. Directors working within it have consistently demonstrated a capacity for blending emotional intimacy with genuine dread, for finding horror in domesticity and loss rather than in pure shock, and for constructing sequences of almost unbearable tension within environments that feel grounded and real rather than fantastical. These qualities, the ability to generate genuine fear while maintaining emotional authenticity, are precisely what Fallen Kingdom needed if it was going to distinguish itself from the more straightforward action-adventure tone of Jurassic World. J. A. Bayona, the Catalan director who had made his name internationally with The Orphanage in 2007 and subsequently directed the devastating tsunami disaster drama The Impossible in 2012 and the emotionally complex fantasy A Monster Calls in 2016, was the ideal candidate. His filmography demonstrated exactly the combination of qualities the sequel required. He could handle large-scale spectacle, as The Impossible proved, but his deepest instincts were those of an intimate filmmaker, someone who understood that the most powerful cinema is built on emotional truth rather than visual bombardment. Bayona brought to Fallen Kingdom a tonal sensibility that fundamentally distinguishes it from every other film in the franchise. His influence is most visible in the film's second half, set almost entirely within the cavernous, shadow-drenched corridors of the Lockwood estate. Under Bayona's direction, the mansion becomes something out of a Gothic novel, a place of secrets, darkness, and ancestral guilt, where a genetically engineered monster stalks a young girl through moonlit bedrooms in sequences that owe more to classic horror cinema than to summer blockbuster convention. This tonal shift was deliberate, considered, and entirely coherent with the story the film was trying to tell. The creative meeting, Frank Marshall, Trevorrow, and Universal Pictures. The formal development process for the sequel moved quickly once Jurassic World's commercial potential became apparent. Producer Frank Marshall, a veteran of the franchise who had been involved with the Jurassic Park series for decades, met with Trevorrow and executives at Universal Pictures shortly after Jurassic World's release to begin formal discussions about the sequel's direction. These conversations were foundational in establishing what Fallen Kingdom would and would not be. Perhaps the most significant creative decision made at this early stage was Trevorrow's insistence that the sequel should not involve another dinosaur theme park. This was a bold and commercially counterintuitive position. The theme park premise is the franchise's most recognizable and commercially reliable element. It is the container within which every previous film had operated, the familiar structure that audiences understood and expected. Abandoning it entirely was a genuine creative risk. But Trevorrow was insistent, and his reasoning was creatively sound. The theme park premise had been exhausted. 3 films had explored what happens when the park fails and the dinosaurs escape. A 4th film retreading the same ground would feel, to use Trevorrow's own earlier language, arbitrary and episodic, exactly what he had said he wanted to avoid. To tell a genuinely new story, the franchise needed a genuinely new premise. The premise Trevorrow proposed was both simpler and more radical than anything the franchise had attempted before: dinosaurs and humans coexisting in the same world, without the mediation of a controlled environment. No park. No island. No perimeter fence separating the prehistoric from the modern. Just 2 sets of species, one ancient, one contemporary, sharing a planet and having to figure out what that means. Open-source dinosaurs, the most radical idea in the franchise's history. The most conceptually audacious element of Trevorrow's early development thinking for the sequel was an idea that, in its earliest form, was even more radical than what eventually appeared on screen. Trevorrow suggested that the follow-up films could explore the idea of dinosaurs going what he described as open source, meaning that the genetic technology required to create them would become widely available, accessible to multiple entities around the world rather than controlled by a single corporation. The implications of this idea are staggering, and they represent a genuine escalation of the franchise's central anxiety about humanity's relationship with genetic power. In the original Jurassic Park films, the fear was contained, one company, one island, one catastrophically bad idea. The horror was local and specific. But if dinosaur creation technology became open source, freely available, commercially distributed, potentially in the hands of governments, corporations, criminal organizations, independent researchers, and private collectors simultaneously, then the scale of the problem becomes truly global and truly irreversible. This idea, in modified and somewhat less explicit form, became one of the central concerns threading through Fallen Kingdom and into Jurassic World Dominion. The underground auction in Fallen Kingdom, where a room full of international buyers with deeply questionable intentions bid on living dinosaurs and the genetic technology associated with them, is a direct expression of this fear. The Indoraptor, engineered as a deployable weapon rather than a scientific achievement, represents the logical endpoint of the open-source nightmare, the moment when the technology escapes the control of even the people who created it and becomes available to whoever can afford it. The concern is not merely science-fictional. It maps directly onto real-world anxieties about the democratization of dangerous technologies, biological, nuclear, chemical, and the difficulty of controlling the proliferation of knowledge once it has been shared beyond a small group of responsible custodians. Trevorrow was using the dinosaur premise to talk about something genuinely contemporary and genuinely terrifying, the moment when humanity's most powerful tools become too widely distributed to govern. Colin Trevorrow co-wrote the screenplay for Fallen Kingdom with Derek Connolly, his collaborator on Jurassic World. Their partnership had produced one of the highest-grossing films in cinema history, and their working relationship was built on a shared understanding of what the franchise was and what it could become. The screenplay they developed for Fallen Kingdom had to accomplish several difficult things simultaneously. It had to tell a satisfying, emotionally complete story in its own right while also functioning as the middle chapter of a trilogy, advancing the larger narrative without resolving it, raising stakes without reaching a climax. It had to honor the franchise's established characters and mythology while introducing new elements, new characters, new locations, new threats, that were fresh enough to justify the film's existence as something more than a retread. The solution they arrived at was structurally elegant, split the film into two distinct acts with radically different tones and settings. The first half is a classic Jurassic adventure, action, spectacle, volcanic destruction, the desperate rescue mission on Isla Nublar. The second half is something entirely different, a gothic thriller set in a great house, intimate and dark, more concerned with horror and moral philosophy than with dinosaur chases. The tonal gear shift is jarring for some audiences, but it is also the film's most distinctive creative choice, the moment where Fallen Kingdom most clearly asserts its own identity rather than simply following the template of its predecessors. The vision behind the vision, what development tells us about the film. Understanding the development history of Fallen Kingdom illuminates the film itself in profound ways. This was not a film made in haste or in response to commercial pressure alone. It was conceived carefully, over years, by people who had strong and specific ideas about where the franchise should go and why. The decision to step away from the theme park premise, the deliberate recruitment of a horror director, the early articulation of coexistence as the franchise's next great theme, all of these choices were made with clear creative intention. The result is a film that is more ambitious and more challenging than it might initially appear. Fallen Kingdom is not trying to be Jurassic World. It is trying to be the film that makes Jurassic World Dominion possible, the chapter that breaks the world open, releases the dinosaurs from their island, introduces the moral and ethical complexities that the finale will have to address, and leaves the audience not with resolution but with the unsettling awareness that something enormous and irreversible has just happened. That is exactly what a great middle chapter should do. And the development story behind the film reveals that this was the intention from almost the very beginning, a testament to the creative seriousness that animated the entire Jurassic World trilogy from its earliest conception. Conclusion: a franchise reinvented through creative courage. The production and development of Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom is ultimately a story about creative courage, the courage to step away from what works in search of what is true, to hand a beloved franchise to a new director with a different sensibility, to abandon the most commercially reliable element of a successful formula in pursuit of something more meaningful. Not every one of those gambles paid off equally for every audience member. But they were gambles made for the right reasons, by people who genuinely believed that the Jurassic Park story had more to say, and who were willing to take real risks to give it the chance to say it. You said, explain this key point from the Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom 2018 movie in full expanded form of 2,000 words and do not put references. In July 2015, Universal Pictures made official what had long been discussed in private. A sequel to Jurassic World was confirmed, scheduled for a June 22, 2018 release date in the United States. The announcement carried with it a full structural blueprint. Colin Trevorrow and Derek Connolly would return to write the screenplay, Frank Marshall would produce, Steven Spielberg and Trevorrow would serve as executive producers, and both Chris Pratt and Bryce Dallas Howard would reprise their leading roles. The financial terms of Pratt and Howard's involvement, $8 and $10 million respectively, reflected the enormous commercial weight the sequel was expected to carry. Jurassic World had become one of the highest-grossing films in cinema history almost immediately upon its release, and the studio's investment in its follow-up was correspondingly substantial. But the most revealing aspect of the announcement was not the financial details or the casting confirmations. It was Trevorrow's immediate declaration about what the sequel would not be. He stated clearly and deliberately that the film would not involve a group of dinosaurs chasing people around an island, a premise he described as repetitive. Coming from the director who had just made a spectacularly successful film built largely around exactly that premise, this was a bold and philosophically serious position to take. Trevorrow was not content to exploit his own success. He wanted to push forward into genuinely new territory, even at the risk of alienating audiences who wanted more of the same. His early articulation of the open-source storyline demonstrated just how ambitiously he was thinking. He described a scenario in which the genetic technology for creating dinosaurs escapes the control of any single corporation and becomes accessible to multiple entities around the world simultaneously, framing it with a vivid analogy. If InGen, the original dinosaur cloning company, is Apple, what happens when the equivalent of generic PC manufacturers get access to the same technology? What if 15 different organizations around the world could each create their own dinosaurs for their own purposes? The implications, commercial, military, ecological, ethical, are almost incomprehensibly vast, and they represent a genuine and serious engagement with contemporary anxieties about the proliferation of powerful biological technologies. The story of how J.A. Bayona came to direct Fallen Kingdom is one of near misses and fortunate timing. By October 2015, just months after Jurassic World's release, Bayona was already being considered for the sequel. However, he had a prior commitment. He had already signed on to direct the sequel to World War Z, the 2013 Brad Pitt zombie thriller, and he chose to honor that commitment rather than jump to the Jurassic project immediately. Then, 3 months later, Bayona dropped out of the World War Z sequel due to other professional obligations. And in April 2016, he was formally hired as the director of Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom, with Belen Otienza and Patrick Crowley joining Frank Marshall as producers. The reasons why Bayona was so strongly desired for this project are illuminating. Spielberg, Marshall, and producer Kathleen Kennedy had all been deeply impressed by his 2012 disaster drama The Impossible, a film based on the true story of a family's survival of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami that demonstrated Bayona's extraordinary ability to combine large-scale physical catastrophe with intimate, shattering emotional truth. They had actually considered approaching Bayona to direct Jurassic World itself, but he had declined at that stage, feeling there was insufficient time for proper production. Trevorrow's personal motivation for wanting Bayona ran through a different film entirely. It was The Orphanage, Bayona's 2007 Spanish horror debut, a ghost story of devastating emotional complexity set in an isolated mansion, that convinced Trevorrow that Bayona was exactly the right filmmaker for Fallen Kingdom. The film's second half, set in the grand and shadow-filled Lockwood estate, was conceived from an early stage as a haunted house film, and Bayona's mastery of that particular genre, his ability to generate genuine dread within domestic spaces, was precisely what the screenplay demanded. When Bayona met with Trevorrow before being officially hired, his enthusiasm for the project crystallized around this exact element. He was told the script's second half would unfold like a haunted house story, and that description was what locked in his commitment. He saw immediately how his particular sensibility, his instinct for Gothic atmosphere, psychological tension, and emotional intimacy, could be applied to material that, in other hands, might default to pure action spectacle. Trevorrow's public statement upon Bayona's hiring captured the spirit of the creative relationship perfectly. "The franchise must evolve or perish," he said, and Bayona was the right person to push the boundaries of what a Jurassic film could be. The working title and early pre-production. During its development and production phases, the film operated under a working title that was simultaneously poetic and strategically vague, Ancient Futures. This title served a dual practical purpose, maintaining secrecy about the project's true nature during the casting phase and production planning, while also gesturing toward one of the film's central thematic preoccupations, the collision between the deep prehistoric past, which has been artificially resurrected, and the rapidly accelerating technological future into which it has been unleashed. Full pre-production was underway by July 2016. Production designer Andy Nicholson was brought on board and spent 4 intensive weeks in Barcelona with Bayona, poring over reference photographs, discussing background details, and developing Bayona's vision for the Lockwood mansion, the film's primary location for its Gothic second half. These conversations were foundational. The physical design of the mansion needed to communicate everything that words could not: the weight of old money, the burden of guilty secrets, the grandeur of a past that casts a long shadow over the present. Bayona approached it as he would approach any horror film. The location itself needed to be a character, not merely a setting. During this period, the question of where to set the film's second half, after the dinosaurs are transported from Isla Nublar to the mainland, generated significant discussion among the filmmakers. Ecuador and Peru were scouted as possible locations. Cabo San Lucas was considered by Marshall as potentially ideal. England was eventually chosen as the filming location, despite Spielberg's initial concern that it felt geographically too distant from the fictional Central American setting of Isla Nublar. The solution was to simply establish through the narrative that the dinosaurs had been transported by ship across a significant distance, the journey itself becoming part of the story's logic rather than an obstacle to it. The actual writing of the screenplay began in a pleasantly unconventional way. About 2 weeks after Jurassic World opened in theaters in June 2015, Trevorrow embarked on a road trip from Los Angeles to Vermont, his home state. Derek Connolly agreed to come along so that the two could use the 8 days of driving time to talk through the basic ideas Trevorrow had been developing for the sequel. By the end of the trip, they had devised the story's fundamental structure and central themes. The thematic inspiration Trevorrow cited for the screenplay is remarkably literary. He pointed to a line of dialogue from Dr. Alan Grant in the original 1993 Jurassic Park, a line about 2 species separated by 65 million years of evolution being suddenly thrown back into the mix together, and the impossibility of predicting what that would mean, as the seed from which the entire story grew. The line is not a warning about danger. It is an acknowledgement of radical uncertainty, of the limits of human foresight in the face of genuinely unprecedented situations. This acknowledgement of uncertainty became the film's moral engine. Equally important as an influence was the idea that a mistake made a long time ago cannot simply be undone. This is a deeply adult and deeply honest insight, and it gives Fallen Kingdom a gravity that distinguishes it from more conventional blockbuster storytelling. The dinosaurs exist. That fact cannot be reversed. The question is not whether to wish they had never been created. It is how to live with the reality that they were. The film's themes of political megalomania, greed, and the making of consequential decisions without adequate care for their effects on living beings all flow directly from this foundational idea. The screenplay also drew extensively on Michael Crichton's original novels, Jurassic Park and The Lost World, for both specific story elements and broader conceptual inspiration. The volcano on Isla Nublar, for instance, existed in Crichton's first novel, and the writers chose to incorporate it into the film's plot as a way of honoring the source material while also serving the story's needs for irreversible, ticking clock stakes. Dialogue from Crichton's novels was also incorporated, most notably for Ian Malcolm. The character of Benjamin Lockwood, Hammond's previously unmentioned former partner, was similarly inspired by the novel, which depicts the early years of the dinosaur cloning project. Trevorrow reasoned that such an enormous, complex, and expensive scientific undertaking would necessarily have involved many people beyond Hammond himself, and that among those people there would inevitably have been someone who, like Hammond, became defined by the project and its consequences. Lockwood emerged from this reasoning as a way of both expanding the franchise's mythology and embodying the film's central concern with the long-term consequences of scientific ambition. The script's two-story structure, the Isla Nublar rescue mission and the Lockwood estate conspiracy, was directly inspired by Spielberg's 2015 film Bridge of Spies, in which two apparently separate narratives collide in the middle and continue together as a single unified story. Trevorrow was also influenced by the 1975 political thriller 3 Days of the Condor, which he admired for its capacity to make the audience believe they understand the situation before pulling the rug entirely from beneath their feet. Bayona's creative contributions, expanding the script's vision. Once Bayona was hired, he became an active creative partner in refining and expanding the screenplay rather than simply executing what Trevorrow and Connolly had written. His contributions were significant and specific. The film's underwater opening sequence, in which a mercenary team retrieves Indominus Rex DNA from the lagoon while the Mosasaurus lurks, was already in the script, but Bayona pushed for it to be expanded significantly. Because the film has a lengthy period before the volcano action begins, Bayona felt the opening needed to be genuinely spectacular in order to establish the film's stakes and energy immediately. He advocated for a larger set and a more elaborate sequence, and that advocacy shaped the memorable opening audiences eventually saw. Bayona also expanded the surgery sequence in which Blue receives an emergency blood transfusion. He considered this scene essential for demonstrating the depth and authenticity of Owen's relationship with Blue, not just as handler and animal, but as two individuals with a genuine bond. By giving the scene more time and attention, Bayona ensured that the emotional core of Owen's motivation throughout the film was clearly established before the action escalated. One of Bayona's most structurally significant contributions involved the ship sequence transporting the dinosaurs from Isla Nublar to the mainland. He felt the original version was too lengthy and too passive, and suggested the addition of an action beat in which Owen and Claire must retrieve blood from the Tyrannosaurus Rex to assist in Blue's surgery. This suggestion simultaneously solved a pacing problem and deepened the emotional stakes of the sequence. Perhaps most importantly, Bayona changed the film's dinosaur sale from a private transaction, as written in Trevorrow and Connolly's draft, to a public auction. This single change transformed the scene's entire moral and cinematic character. An auction puts all the greed in the same room simultaneously, making the ugliness collective and visible, transforming what might have been a quiet backroom deal into a spectacular display of human vice. Bayona believed the auction format was the most effective possible way to dramatize the depths of human corruption, and Spielberg and Trevorrow agreed. Bayona drew explicitly on Alfred Hitchcock as an influence for the gothic suspense elements of the film's second half, and compared the overall tonal arc of Fallen Kingdom to The Empire Strikes Back and Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, both celebrated examples of sequels that successfully adopted a darker, more challenging tone than their predecessors. For the sequence in which Maisie is hunted through the mansion by the Indoraptor, Bayona envisioned it as the climax of a fairy tale, a princess in a tower, a dragon in pursuit, drawing on the deep archetypal grammar of Gothic storytelling to give the sequence emotional resonance beyond its surface-level horror point. One of the screenplay's most audacious elements, the revelation that Maisie Lockwood is a human clone, required particular care in its development and justification. Trevorrow was candid about both his excitement and his anxiety regarding this storyline. He positioned it not as science fiction shock but as emotional truth, the idea that a person consumed by grief and love might try to bring back someone they had lost is, he argued, one of the most universally human impulses imaginable. The technology required to act on that impulse is further advanced than most people realize, he noted. We are, in reality, closer to human cloning than we are to dinosaur cloning. Spielberg was enthusiastic about the human cloning storyline specifically because of the questions it could raise in the sequel, questions about identity, rights, personhood, and what it means to be human that could carry significant weight in Jurassic World Dominion. Trevorrow himself acknowledged being nervous about audience reaction, but his conviction that the idea was emotionally grounded in recognizable human experience ultimately prevailed. The casting of Fallen Kingdom was conducted with the film's working title Ancient Futures firmly in place, and in the interest of secrecy, references to dinosaurs in audition materials were replaced with animals such as lions and grizzly bears. This extraordinary level of discretion was maintained throughout the casting phase. Between takes, Bayona used an iPod to play music, a practice he had employed on all his previous films, in order to establish and maintain specific emotional atmospheres for the scenes being filmed. Different scenes required different music, and the choice of what to play was as carefully considered as any other directorial decision. He also played sound effects from elsewhere in the Jurassic Park franchise, including Tyrannosaurus roars, with the specific intention of generating genuine, unscripted reactions from the actors. The logic behind this approach is simple but psychologically astute. An actor who hears a sudden, thunderous animal roar will flinch and tense in ways that are physically authentic rather than performed. That authenticity translates directly onto the screen in a way that even the most skilled performance cannot perfectly replicate. Justice Smith, whose character Franklin Webb is portrayed as highly anxious and easily frightened throughout the film, was a particular target of this technique. Bayona would play unexpected sounds and suddenly loud music between takes specifically to unsettle Smith, ensuring that the genuine nervousness visible in his performance had a real physiological basis. What might sound like directorial cruelty was in fact a sophisticated tool for extracting authentic emotional texture from a young actor in a challenging role. Bayona's collaborative relationship with Chris Pratt was more conventionally dialogic. The two discussed each scene involving Owen Grady before filming it, and many of Pratt's suggestions and ideas found their way into the final film. This kind of actor-director collaboration, where the performer's instincts are genuinely integrated into the creative process rather than simply accommodated, is characteristic of directors who understand that the best performances emerge from genuine creative investment rather than mere technical execution. Ted Levine's portrayal of the mercenary Ken Wheatley was shaped significantly by the actor's own creative ambitions. Levine arrived with a clear and specific intention: to create a character so comprehensively unpleasant that audiences would find him thoroughly, satisfyingly hateable. He brought story notes to set, actively suggested ideas for making Wheatley more odious, and worked with Bayona to construct a portrait of military-inflected cruelty and greed that would make the character's eventual fate feel not just narratively justified but emotionally cathartic. Political subtext, Trump references woven into the fabric. Among the film's less widely discussed but genuinely significant production decisions was the deliberate incorporation of references to the political climate of 2017, specifically to President Donald Trump and the broader cultural phenomenon of science denial that Trevorrow felt was defining the era. A news ticker visible in one scene references an unnamed United States president questioning the very existence of dinosaurs, an absurdist satirical touch that required no further elaboration to land its point. Trevorrow included this detail because he was troubled by what he described as a pervasive denial of science in the contemporary political landscape. In the context of a franchise whose entire premise rests on the consequences of ignoring scientific wisdom and proceeding recklessly with powerful technology, the reference carries particular ironic weight. Toby Jones, who plays the auctioneer Mr. Eversole, was given the freedom to determine his character's physical appearance himself. The result, a wig closely resembling Trump's distinctive hairstyle, was a deliberate choice, connecting the character's gleeful facilitation of morally bankrupt commerce to a recognizable contemporary archetype of ostentatious wealth and ethical vacancy. Perhaps most memorably, an unscripted moment during filming produced one of the film's most pointed political references. Ted Levine's character refers to Daniella Pineda's character Zia as a nasty woman, a phrase that had been made famous by Trump during the 2016 presidential debates. The line was improvised on set and left in the final cut, adding a layer of contemporary political resonance to a character who was already constructed as a portrait of contemptible machismo. Of all the elaborate sequences filmed during production, the gyrosphere scene, in which Claire and Franklin are trapped inside one of Jurassic World's ball-shaped tour vehicles as it plunges off a cliff and into the ocean, stands as perhaps the most logistically complex and physically demanding achievement of the entire shoot. The sequence was filmed across multiple locations using multiple techniques, each addressing a specific aspect of the action. In Hawaii, the edge arm, a stabilized camera system attached to a crane mounted on a truck, was used to film the actors riding inside the gyrosphere as it was hauled on a trailer, simulating the vehicle's movement across terrain. This allowed for steady, dynamic camera movement even over rough ground. In England, the production constructed an outdoor roller coaster track with a full 40-foot drop specifically for the sequence. Bryce Dallas Howard and Justice Smith rode in the actual gyrosphere on this track for the scene in which the vehicle plummets off the cliff. Bayona had specifically requested that this portion of the scene not be shot using green screen technology, even though doing so would have been significantly easier and cheaper. His reasoning was direct: he wanted the actors to experience genuine fear, because genuine fear reads differently on camera than performed fear. Putting two actors on a roller coaster with a 40-foot drop guarantees authentic physical and emotional responses that no amount of acting craft can fully replicate. The underwater portion of the sequence, in which Owen struggles to break open the submerged gyrosphere and rescue Claire and Franklin, was filmed in a large purpose-built indoor tank at Pinewood Studios. The tank was constructed and filled specifically for this sequence. The filming lasted 5 days and required a team of 85 crew members. Pratt was assisted by a diving instructor throughout. The sequence was designed to appear as a single continuous shot, but was actually assembled from 5 separate takes merged together in post-production, an editing achievement that required precise planning during filming to ensure the joins would be invisible. The interior of the Lockwood estate, the film's primary setting for its Gothic second half, was constructed entirely on sound stages at Pinewood Studios, and the scale and ambition of the construction reflects the centrality of the location to the film's identity. Production designer Andy Nicholson and his team built multiple distinct spaces within the estate, each serving specific narrative purposes: Eli Mills's office, Dr. Wu's underground laboratory, a dinosaur containment facility, separate bedrooms for Benjamin and Maisie Lockwood, and a large library filled with dinosaur skeletons and artifacts. The library set was later redecorated and converted into the estate's underground garage, which serves as the auction venue, a practical production decision that also carries thematic resonance. The space that was once a repository of knowledge and wonder transformed into a marketplace for exploitation. Nicholson's approach to designing each set was rigorously practical. He pre-visualized every space to ensure it would be large enough to accommodate both the human actors and the digitally integrated dinosaurs that would inhabit it. As he noted, being told that a velociraptor is a certain number of feet long is one thing, understanding what that length actually means in a physical space, in terms of how it moves and how it relates to human actors, is something that can only be fully grasped through physical construction and spatial planning. The exterior of the Lockwood estate was achieved through a combination of real-world location photography and digital set extension. The Cragside Country House in Northumberland, England, a dramatic Victorian mansion set among dense coniferous woodland, provided the visual basis for the estate's exterior. The film crew captured plate shots of Cragside and used computer effects to combine them with footage filmed on the constructed sets, creating a seamless composite that gave the estate its imposing, isolated character. No actors were present during the Cragside shoot. The location served purely as photographic reference material that was then integrated into the film's visual architecture. Hawaii, recreating a lost world. The Hawaiian portion of the production brought a completely different set of challenges. Multiple locations across Oahu were used to construct the visual reality of Isla Nublar, each selected and dressed with meticulous attention to both physical plausibility and emotional resonance. The Hiiakea small boat harbor served as Isla Nublar's shipping dock, with more than half the harbor closed for filming. Smoke machines transformed the location to match the atmosphere of a dinosaur evacuation operation under volcanic threat. Nearby jungle locations were used for the sequence in which Owen tracks and finds Blue, with their encounter staged in front of a rusted Ford Explorer, one of the original tour vehicles from the 1993 Jurassic Park, a detail that connected the new film to the franchise's founding mythology with quiet elegance. Kualoa Ranch, a location with a long history of film production in Hawaii, provided additional exterior settings. The Main Street section of the Jurassic World theme park was physically rebuilt on Police Beach, a reconstruction that required more than 3 months to complete and involved many of the same prop makers who had built the original set in Louisiana for the first Jurassic World film. The rebuilt Main Street had to be aged and weathered to convey the impression of years of abandonment following the park's collapse, a detail that added layers of melancholy and atmosphere to every scene filmed there. The volcanic special effects, one of the film's most spectacular visual achievements, were developed by David Vickery and his team at Industrial Light and Magic in close consultation with volcanologists. The team researched the specific behavior of the type of volcano depicted, studying the various stages of lava flow and pyroclastic activity in order to base their digital recreations on genuine scientific data, even while acknowledging that the timeline of the eruption had been compressed for dramatic purposes. One detail from the volcanic sequence production stands out for its ingenuity and practical creativity. In a scene set in an underground bunker as lava begins dripping from above, the digital lava was supplemented on set by cat litter that had been soaked in flammable liquid and dropped from 12 nozzles positioned above the set. The purpose was not visual, the litter would not appear in the final film, but practical. The actors needed a physical reference point to react to, something real to look at and respond to rather than empty air. The burning litter gave them that reference, ensuring that their eye lines and physical reactions matched what the digital effects would eventually place in the same space. The original cut and what was left behind. The original assembly cut of Fallen Kingdom ran to approximately 2 hours and 45 minutes, nearly 40 minutes longer than the final theatrical release of 2 hours and 8 minutes. Substantial amounts of footage were trimmed in the editing process, most of it cut for rhythm and pacing reasons rather than because of any narrative deficiency. Among the scenes removed for runtime reasons was a sequence that would have revealed Zia Rodriguez to be a lesbian, a character detail that originated with Bayona and Trevorrow and was deliberately conceived as a natural, uncommented upon aspect of who Zia is. The decision to cut the scene was made purely on the basis of runtime, not content, but Bayona and Trevorrow chose not to include it among the deleted scenes on the film's home video release, believing it did not represent anything that would add meaningful value for viewers outside the context of the complete film. One sequence that was cut during editing but subsequently reinstated as a post-credit scene was the moment in which pteranodons from Lockwood's estate land atop the replica Eiffel Tower at the Paris Las Vegas resort, a glimpse of the new world the film's climax has unleashed, presented with darkly comedic timing. The image of prehistoric flying reptiles perched on a fake Parisian landmark in the Nevada desert perfectly encapsulates the film's central argument. The world has been fundamentally altered, and there is no returning to what it was before. The filming of Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom was, by any reasonable measure, an extraordinary undertaking. From the purpose-built roller coaster track in England to the weeks-long underwater tank work at Pinewood, from the reconstruction of Jurassic World's main street on a Hawaiian beach to the digital integration of Craigside's Victorian grandeur into the Lockwood estate's visual identity, every aspect of the production reflected a creative team genuinely committed to realizing an ambitious vision at the highest possible level. Bayona's statement that making the film was the biggest challenge of his life was not hyperbole. It was an honest acknowledgement of what it means to take a beloved franchise into new territory and refuse, at every stage, to take the easy way out. At the very center of Jurassic World, Fallen Kingdom's identity as a film is its commitment to making its dinosaurs feel genuinely, viscerally real. Every creative and technological decision made about the creatures, how they moved, how they looked, how they interacted with human actors, was driven by a single overriding principle: these animals must feel alive. The production deployed two primary methods to achieve this, combining the physical, tactile presence of animatronics with the unlimited flexibility of computer-generated imagery, and the interplay between these two approaches defined the visual character of the film in profound ways. Special effects artist Neil Scanlon served as the creature effects supervisor, overseeing the construction and operation of the film's physical animatronic dinosaurs. Visual effects supervisors David Vickery and Alex Watt led the industrial light and magic team responsible for the CGI creatures. Rather than operating in separate silos, these two teams worked in close, continuous collaboration, ensuring that the practical and digital versions of each animal matched each other precisely in proportion, texture, color, and movement. The result is a film in which the boundary between physical and digital is almost entirely invisible, a seamless integration of two fundamentally different technologies in service of a single unified vision. The scale of the CGI effort was enormous. Approximately 52 ILM animators worked on the film, split between the Vancouver studio, which handled the dinosaur stampede sequences, and the London studio, which created the remaining creature work. In total, the film contains approximately 1,200 visual effects shots, a number that reflects both the ambition of the creature work and the complexity of integrating digital animals into the film's varied physical environments. Research, paleontology, and a new vision for dinosaur appearance. One of the most striking aspects of the creature work in Fallen Kingdom is the deliberate decision to make the dinosaurs more visually varied, colorful, and exotic than in previous franchise installments. This choice was not arbitrary, it was grounded in both creative instinct and emerging paleontological research. Bayona, after reading fan discussions about dinosaurs and speaking directly with children about what they found most fascinating about prehistoric creatures, became convinced that texture and color were areas where previous films had left creative potential unexplored. Paleontological research conducted in the years leading up to the film's production had increasingly suggested that real dinosaurs were likely far more colorful and visually complex than the relatively muted, earth-toned animals that had dominated earlier portrayals. Armed with this scientific basis and a clear creative intention, Bayona and the creature teams pushed the visual palette of Fallen Kingdom's dinosaurs toward something richer, more varied, and more genuinely exotic than audiences had seen before. The ILM team also conducted extensive research into the movement and behavior of the dinosaurs, consulting with paleontologists throughout the process. For locomotion, for the fundamental question of how these animals would actually move their bodies through space, the team looked beyond dinosaur fossils to living large animals, particularly elephants and rhinos. The physical logic of how a multi-ton creature carries its weight, accelerates, and changes direction provided a real-world reference framework that paleontological data alone could not supply. Dinosaur expert John Hankler of the Denver Museum of Nature and Science served as a formal advisor on the film. Beyond his consultative role, Hankler provided several physical dinosaur fossil recreations for use as props, including an accurately scaled velociraptor skeleton that appears in the background of the Lockwood Estate's library, a detail of scientific accuracy embedded within a Gothic fictional setting. More animatronics than any previous sequel. Fallen Kingdom represented a significant step forward in the franchise's use of physical animatronic creatures, both in terms of quantity and technological sophistication. While the previous Jurassic World had featured only a single animatronic dinosaur, Fallen Kingdom featured 5, and those 5 were more technologically advanced than anything the series had previously attempted. Scanlan spent more than 8 months at Pinewood Studios before and during filming, working with a crew of approximately 35 people to build, refine, and operate these physical creatures. The reason for the increased use of animatronics was directly tied to the nature of the human-dinosaur interactions the script required. Fallen Kingdom features more intimate physical proximity between human actors and dinosaurs than any previous film in the franchise, and in those situations, a physical animatronic presence is simply irreplaceable. An actor performing against a tennis ball on a stick cannot generate the same quality of emotional response as an actor performing against a full-scale, physically present, breathing, moving creature. Bayona articulated this clearly. Animatronics give actors something real to perform against, and that reality produces an extra level of genuine excitement and authentic response that digital effects cannot replicate. Steven Spielberg offered Bayona a valuable piece of advice regarding the use of animatronics on set: resist the temptation to fill every shot with them. The counterintuitive wisdom is that showing less creates the impression of more. A dinosaur partially glimpsed, suggested, partially present, reads as larger and more overwhelming than one fully revealed. This is the same principle that Spielberg himself had applied on the original Jurassic Park, where mechanical failures with the animatronic T-Rex famously forced the director to show the animal less than planned, and the resulting restraint contributed enormously to the creature's impact. The T-Rex, an iconic individual across 3 decades. The Tyrannosaurus Rex in Fallen Kingdom occupies a unique position within the franchise's mythology, not merely as a species representative, but as a specific, named individual whose story has threaded through multiple films across 3 decades of storytelling. Trevorrow was explicit about this: the T-Rex in Fallen Kingdom is the same individual that attacked the characters in the original 1993 Jurassic Park, the same animal that was transported to San Diego in The Lost World, and the same creature that appeared in Jurassic World. She is not simply a T-Rex. She is this T-Rex, a character with her own history, her own survival story, and her own claim on the audience's emotional investment. The animatronic T-Rex used for filming was built from a full-scale, three-dimensional print of the animal's head and shoulders, created using ILM's digital model of the creature from Jurassic World as the reference template. The resulting animatronic was capable of breathing and moving its head, controlled by operators using joysticks. It was used for the sequence in which Owen and Claire attempt to retrieve blood from the sedated T-Rex in its cage, a scene that required genuine close physical proximity between human actors and the creature, making the animatronic essential. The scene's opening shots used the animatronic exclusively. The ending shots used CGI exclusively. The middle portion combined both methods in a blend so seamless that the transition is invisible to the viewer. Blue, designing empathy into a velociraptor. Blue, the last surviving member of Owen's velociraptor pack, required a different creative approach than the T-Rex, one focused less on physical power and more on emotional expressiveness. The animatronic version of Blue was designed specifically to be lying down on an operating table, depicting the animal in her injured and vulnerable state during Zia's emergency surgery. Up to 12 puppeteers, concealed beneath the operating table, were needed to control the animatronic's movements during filming, a remarkable logistical undertaking for a single sustained scene. The surgery scene was actually filmed twice, once with the animatronic Blue and once without, and the two versions were combined in post-production to create a final version that uses each approach where it is most effective. This dual filming approach allowed the production to capture both the authentic tactile reality of the animatronic and the greater flexibility of CGI in a single sequence. For the CGI version of Blue, the ILM team made a decision about movement that is both technically specific and thematically profound. According to visual effects supervisor Vickery, Blue's movements were deliberately designed to resemble those of a dog, particularly in the way she cocks her head when looking at Owen, communicating attention, recognition, and emotional engagement in a way that human audiences are neurologically primed to find endearing and relatable. By mapping Blue's behavioral vocabulary onto the most familiar and beloved of domestic animals, the filmmakers ensured that audiences would instinctively recognize her as an individual with an inner life, not merely a predator to be feared. The Indoraptor, engineering terror. The Indoraptor, the film's primary antagonist creature, engineered from Indominus Rex and Velociraptor DNA as a deployable biological weapon, required a design philosophy fundamentally different from any of the film's natural dinosaurs. Where the other creatures were designed to feel like animals, the Indoraptor was designed to feel like a nightmare. Bayona chose black as the creature's dominant color specifically because of how it behaves in darkness. In the film's gothic second half, the Indoraptor hunts through shadow-filled corridors and moonlit rooms, and its black coloration means that in low light, only its eyes and teeth are visible, an image of pure, distilled horror that Bayona found deeply effective. The visual reference for the Indoraptor's most unsettling features, its elongated front teeth and long, curved claws, was Count Orlok from the 1922 silent horror classic Nosferatu, a deliberate artistic decision that connected the creature to the deepest traditions of Gothic monster imagery. The Indoraptor was created primarily through CGI, with practical physical elements, a head, neck, shoulders, foot, and arm, constructed for close-up shots where the creature's physical presence needed to be tangible and immediate. For some scenes, an inflatable stand-in operated by two puppeteers was used on set as a spatial reference, to be replaced by the CGI version in post-production. The creature was designed with a distinctive combination of quadrupedal and bipedal movement, standing approximately 10 feet tall when upright, and given elongated, almost human-like arms that contributed to its deeply unsettling appearance. An early version of the Indoraptor storyline featured two animals, a white Indoraptor and a black one, with the black killing the white in a dynamic Bayona compared to the biblical story of Cain and Abel. The white Indoraptor was ultimately removed from the script because the story was considered sufficiently complex without it. Among all the creature decisions made during the production of Fallen Kingdom, none carried more emotional weight or generated more critical discussion than the death of the Brachiosaurus on Isla Nublar's burning dock. Bayona confirmed that this specific animal is meant to be the same individual first glimpsed in the original 1993 Jurassic Park, the first dinosaur ever revealed to cinema audiences in that film, standing in golden afternoon light while Dr. Alan Grant and Dr. Ellie Sattler looked on in silent, tear-streaked wonder. The decision to use the same animations from the 1993 film in creating the Brachiosaurus for Fallen Kingdom was both a technical choice and a deeply sentimental one, a direct visual and emotional connection between the franchise's beginning and its present. The Brachiosaurus's death was the very last shot of the entire film to be completed in post-production. Bayona and his team struggled to perfect the CGI of the scene with only days remaining before the film's release, working through the final night before the deadline to get the colors and composition exactly right. The intensity of that effort reflects how profoundly important the moment was to everyone involved, a recognition that this single image, more than any other in the film, carried the full emotional weight of what the franchise was losing when it left the island behind forever. Critics who found much else to criticize in the film consistently singled this scene out as genuinely poignant, haunting, and emotionally devastating, a testament to what the creature work at its best could achieve. Michael Giacchino's score, honoring the past, building the future. The musical score for Fallen Kingdom was composed by Michael Giacchino, who had also scored Jurassic World and brought to both films a deep reverence for John Williams' original Jurassic Park themes alongside his own distinctive compositional voice. Giacchino incorporated Williams' beloved musical motifs into his score, allowing the emotional architecture of the original film's music to resonate through the new material, creating continuity of feeling even as the story moved into unprecedented territory. A complete soundtrack album was released on June 15, 2018. Marketing, one of the largest campaigns in franchise history. Universal Pictures invested an extraordinary amount of resources in promoting Fallen Kingdom, spending $145 million on prints and advertising while also benefiting from a global partner marketing campaign valued at an additional $185 million, more than double the value of the partner program for the previous film. 9 major commercial partners participated in the campaign: Dairy Queen, Doritos, Dr. Pepper, Ferrero, Jeep, Juicy Fruit, Kellogg's, M&M's, and Skittles. The collective marketing effort produced 1.3 billion promotional items, including 100 million boxes of Kellogg's products and 15 million packages of Kinder Joy candy. Dairy Queen sold themed ice cream desserts in collectible cups. Doritos and Dr. Pepper marketed special editions featuring the film's dinosaurs on their packaging. The single most successful marketing achievement of the campaign was a Jeep television commercial that Trevorrow himself directed for Super Bowl 52, starring Jeff Goldblum and featuring a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Within 24 hours of its broadcast, the commercial had been viewed 39.7 million times online, more than any film trailer following its Super Bowl television debut at that time. Universal also partnered with Amazon for a marketing stunt in which a dinosaur-sized shipping box was driven around Los Angeles on a truck, generating substantial media attention and social media engagement. A dedicated website for the Dinosaur Protection Group, Claire's fictional conservation organization, was launched as an immersive marketing experience, complete with detailed information about the group's mission, a video featuring the actors in character, and the revelation that Isla Nublar, the franchise's second dinosaur island, was no longer inhabited. A counterpart website for a fictional anti-dinosaur organization called Extinction Now was also launched, creating a simulated public debate that extended the film's ethical arguments into the real world. Licensing partners Mattel, Lego, and Funko produced extensive toy lines, including action figures, dinosaur toys, Barbie dolls modeled on Owen and Claire, and multiple Lego sets. A video game titled Jurassic World Evolution was released simultaneously with the film. A virtual reality miniseries following Blue on Isla Nublar during the volcanic eruption was developed for Oculus VR headsets. Release and box office, $1 billion achievement. Fallen Kingdom premiered at the WI Zinc Center in Madrid on May 21, 2018. Before opening internationally in dozens of countries in early June and reaching the United States on June 22. Its domestic opening weekend of $148 million was the 20th best opening weekend in cinema history at the time and the second highest ever for Universal Pictures. The film crossed the $1 billion worldwide gross milestone on July 5, 2018, making it the 35th film of all time to reach that threshold and the third Jurassic film to do so. The international performance was equally impressive. South Korea set opening day records. China delivered a debut of $111.9 million, nearly double the opening day total of the previous film, making Fallen Kingdom the fourth-best Hollywood opening in Chinese box office history at the time. The film's total worldwide gross reached $1.310 billion, making it the third-highest grossing film of 2018. Critical reception: divided but engaged. The critical reception to Fallen Kingdom was genuinely mixed, reflecting the film's deliberate ambition to do something different from its predecessors, an ambition that some critics found admirable and others found frustrating. On Rotten Tomatoes, 47% of critics offered positive assessments, with the site's consensus acknowledging the film's set-piece quality while noting that genuinely thrilling moments were in shorter supply than in earlier installments. Metacritic assigned it a score of 51 out of 100, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audience reception was considerably warmer. CinemaScore audiences gave the film an A- grade, and post-track surveys recorded an 82% positive audience score. Positive reviewers celebrated the film's visual beauty, its darker and more gothic tone, and its willingness to take the franchise into genuinely new territory. The Empire critic gave it 4 out of 5 stars, praising its irreversible narrative strides and its engagement with the logical conclusions of Michael Crichton's original premise. The Hollywood Reporter's reviewer specifically praised the film for finally breaking free from the genre constraints of the previous 4 films. One critic compared it to Star Wars: The Last Jedi as a film that tears down established structures to make room for something genuinely new. Critical reviewers focused their dissatisfaction primarily on the screenplay, its underdeveloped concepts, cartoonish villains, and the sense that the film's ethical and philosophical ambitions exceeded its ability to fully dramatize them. Some felt the film was overstuffed with moral questions it lacked the sophistication to engage with rigorously. Others found the pacing uneven and the villain characterizations too broad to sustain the film's more serious thematic intentions. Almost universally, however, across positive and negative reviews alike, one moment was singled out for unqualified praise: the death of the Brachiosaurus on Isla Nublar's dock, engulfed in volcanic ash while the main characters watch helplessly from the departing ship. Critics described it as poignant, haunting, and emotionally devastating, a moment of genuine cinematic grief that transcended the film's blockbuster context and touched something deeper and more lasting. It was, many agreed, one of the most affecting moments the franchise had ever produced, and a testament to what Fallen Kingdom, at its best, was genuinely capable of achieving.